Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 16th, 2024 Weaverville Town Council Workshop. This session is called to order. Tonight, we will be discussing and hearing from the town manager the presentation of the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. I know that you all, customers, have just received this, so tonight you'll hear the town manager's presentation of it. You'll be able to ask questions or discuss any items, but you also have the opportunity to digest it now that you've gotten the proposed budget over the next few weeks and come back at our workshop in May for probably a more thorough discussion about the implications of the budget. So I do not anticipate any action or public comments this evening. Tonight is a learning experience and to hear what the town manager has to propose. So with that being said, Manager Coffey, it's all your show.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to all of you. This is it's my privilege to again present the budget for the town of Weaverville. I believe all total, this is probably my 26th year of presenting a local government budget. So it's, I won't say they've all been fun, but sometimes there's some fun to it. So I do want to go ahead and start off with the necessary, and that is to share with you that this is the budget that is being proposed has been balanced in pursuant to North Carolina general statutes and the North Carolina Local Government Fiscal Budget and Fiscal Control Act. The budget message is meant to be an overview of budgetary goals, the town's highlights with regard to revenues and expenditures, and then any budgetary changes. I'm going to go fairly quick through this as you will have plenty of time, as the mayor has shared with you, to digest it and then to come back with questions at a future workshop. So I will go fairly quickly through this, but certainly if there's something you don't understand or have a question about, Tanya and I are happy to answer those questions. So we'll share with you that we literally printed this budget at 5:30 this evening, so it's been a fairly difficult budget to put together because we have spent a good bit of time looking at national statistics as far as the economy, but also narrowing in on budget issues in the state of North Carolina as well as locally. So it's been a little bit of a difficult budget. Of significance for us is obviously, as you all are very well aware, we have a great influx of people coming to our area that want to live here, want to move into our small town, but also in Buncombe County and really the region. I think the region is looking at significant growth, but I will say that Weaverville is one of the best places to live, and so I think people are inherently moving here because of the charm that we have in the town. So some of this information at the very bottom of the very first page, you have heard from our planning director, James Eller, who has shared with you some of the population statistics, and I apologize, we do not have more current information than what we have. It simply is not available to us yet. So as you see there at the bottom of the page, the state demographer's office has estimated the population in 2022 in Weaverville at 4,700. And then the 2020 census, which is the most recent census we have, reflected roughly 2,300 dwelling units within town with an estimated 2.8 people per unit. So as you all are well aware, the town has roughly 1,300 new dwelling units that are approved or in some phase of construction. If you're using the 2.8 number per household, simply multiplying that by the 1,300, you get an increase in population of an additional 3,700 people. And so that quickly brings our population well above where we are now, dependent on when those units come online. But you're looking at roughly 8,400 people if you view this from a standpoint of a 5-year build out. So that is not insignificant. So we'll share with you that Currently, the town is only able to count tax valuation of those new developments, is only able to count land in most cases. So we're not able to add into our ad valorem taxes the obvious build-out and occupation of those units. And this does impact us, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. But what I want to share with you is, when approaching this budget, we were looking at it from a standpoint of bridging the gap, or bridging, not necessarily a gap, but bridging where we are today with regard to low tax rate, a history of a low tax rate in Weaverville, and also adding services regularly due to demand for services. So bridge is one of the key components, bridging us between now and when those new developments come online and are actually occupied. And so you will see that I am proposing the utilization of fund balance. Fund balance, it's in town of Weaverville, has been used for many, many years, and I will talk about that further in the message as well. But I have not proposed a tax rate increase at all, though that was a definite consideration within development of the budget. What you will see is a little different. Looking at paragraph 2, I'll try to help us stay together here on, paragraph 2 on page 2. You will see that I'm proposing what I'm calling an enhanced budget. We could have called it many different things. I think in the past I've called it supplemental items to include in the budget. I've called it a number of things, but I'm calling it an enhanced budget this year because I believe it does truly enhance the quality of life, and the items within that budget will definitely make an impact for our citizens. So the proposed budget is 8.99, almost 9 million for general fund. That's a 7.5% decrease, or roughly $27,000 decrease over the current year budget. Again, tax rate I've not proposed a tax rate increase, proposing that we stay at 35 cents per $100 value. The proposed fire district fund, as you may recall, last year we switched over to having to pull out, based on the county's request, we had to pull out the fire department from general fund and put it in a sort of a special revenue fund. So it is its own fund, although we look at it from the standpoint of general fund dollars do go into into our fire department functions for the North Buncombe district. That budget totals $4 million this year, which is a 10% increase and roughly $373,000 over the current year. The majority of that increase is for a 1 cent tax increase in the district. We are not finished with wrapping the budget up for the fire district presentation. Chief Harris will be presenting that to the county here in the next month or so. And so we are actually asking for an increase in that tax rate. This budget that you see tonight has 1 cent. However, based on what he sees within the numbers of calls and the demand for services, he may ask for more than that. So I will certainly keep you posted as we get there. I know that Vice Mayor Cordell has had some questions about having an equal amount of town dollar, an amount of town dollars based on calls for service, whether they're in town versus out of town in the county. And so this budget actually does reflect our what I would say is a fair percentage between those the number of calls. The capital project fund, we'll get into that later, but you see there that we are asking for an additional $150,000, and this would go into the budget for the building or construction of I'll say a pavilion type building, but also with restrooms and a small storage area, and this would be located at the recreation complex above the community center. Then capital reserve there at the bottom of the page, you'll see the paragraph on that. Then as we go through, certainly I don't want to read this word per word to all of you, but I'll skip down to page 3. The proposed water fund is another large part of our budget, and we're proposing that budget at $3.2 million, which is 12% increase, or $360,000. We are proposing a 4% increase in water rates within the budget. The capital project fund, and we will certainly get into more conversation about all of these matters at a future workshop, but I know that you all are very interested in what we're doing with regard to the water treatment plant expansion. So largely, the funding for the expansion as well as the resiliency projects will come out of that capital project fund. So that is there, just a very brief paragraph on that on page 3. On page 4, you see this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. You see the fiscal year, the current year adopted budget in comparison to the upcoming year proposed budget. And of course, I'm not going to go through all of that. We will have time to do that later, but that those tables are prepared to give you a summary of where we are within each of the departments. Same thing at the bottom of page 4, and that is the Fire District Special Revenue Fund, doing the same thing, giving you the adopted budget for the current year and then the proposed budget for next year, as well as percentage variance. To go into a little more in depth on page 5, just to share with you our largest revenue sources, and you've heard this from us before. The 3 largest revenue sources that the town has are property taxes at 40% in this budget, fire district taxes at 19%, and then sales tax at 20%. Again, ad valorem taxes are not proposing an increase in the tax rate, and you'll see the tax values estimated there by Buncombe County for real and personal property. Although there's a slight increase in that revenue source, we are not seeing near what we've seen in the past. We have, for the upcoming budget year, we've budgeted revenue at 4.2% increase over the current year budget, but only 1.4% over our current year actual figures. This only adds $172,887 to our taxes. And again, you'll see, and I say this throughout this budget document, annex land and then build out over the next few years are what that's our target. That's where we're aiming in order to realize increases in property taxes. So again, the fire district rate, we have included 1 cent in this budget, although again, that may change depending on the chief's meeting with the county manager and obviously the county commissioner's decision. They have the final decision on that with regard to fire district tax rates.
And we probably wouldn't know the answer to that until July, correct?
We should know maybe mid-June. We would at least know what the county manager is proposing, and in most cases, they go with what the county manager proposes. Local option sales tax, this is another area where we've had a number of conversations with our colleagues, Tanya and I have, and is an area where we're actually seeing less of the sales tax revenue, and even all of the economists at this point in time are saying that sales taxes are going to come in lower than they have in the past. So although we are forecasting 4.1, that is a slight tick higher than some of the other municipalities in the county, because if you'll recall, over the last couple of years, even during pandemic times, the town was doing well with regard to sales tax. So we are pushing here a little bit on our revenue projections, but we feel strongly that we can get there as far as 4.1%. And that will bring us about $85,000 additional. Going on to page 6, you will see, and I've been aggravating Tanya about this, excuse me, Ms. Dozier. I've been aggravating her about her interest income. As you will recall, we have had some significant increases in our interest, our investment earnings over the last several years, although that too is expected to fall slightly. And so as much as I tried to push her on raising those estimates, she would not do it. And so we do expect that that rates will fall to below 4% in the upcoming fiscal year. They're starting to fall now, and as you all may have noticed, finance rates are going up for even in your personal life. If you buy a car, they're up at 8-9% now, as opposed to where they were just a few years ago at 3 or 4%. So we're seeing the post-pandemic slowdown, if you will. So fund balance, this is something that I raised for your discussion during the March 19th workshop, and ask you how you felt about maintaining the 40% target goal for your fund balance policy. And it was the consensus at that point in time that you feel comfortable with that policy. I always share with you that as you probably have noticed, we are in good shape still with regard to fund balance. The last audit, if you will recall, gave us an available fund balance of $7.6 million. And I will say to you, that's about 80%, a little over 80%, and where our policy says 40. So we continue to stay in good shape with regard to fund balance. I don't want to say that so that we run out and rush to spend that fund balance, because I think it's prudent for us to maintain a healthy fund balance as we go through time. And again, just to note that property taxes have not been increased in the town of Weaverville in 8 years. And so I will say to you that that was something that I strongly considered within this budget. Unfortunately for us, as you will see a couple of times in this document, 1 penny equals only about roughly $122,000. So even raising the rate, once we get to the enhanced budget, this will make more sense to you. Even if we raise the rate to cover some of these enhanced budget items, we're looking at significant tax rate increase if we wanted to do those with tax rate increase as opposed to fund balance. So you have this chart. I really like this chart. It's very simple, very basic, but it shows you where we are with regard to, we did add a year. We typically share this with you as a 5-year history, but we did add a year on fund balance available there at the bottom of page 6, and that shows you where we are, where our target is, and where, how we're doing in that regard. You will see back in 2021, we can all take a guess, and you guys know exactly what this was about. It's about the community center, paying cash for the construction of the community center primarily. There were other things, but that is the biggest chunk. So on page 7, just to give you some highlights of the budget, and again, I don't expect that you will have all the questions answered or even prepared in just tonight, but do want to hit some highlights and want to say that personnel expenses are, I would say for most agencies, especially, and I would say all service-oriented agencies, personnel is going to be your most expensive portion of your budget. So health insurance is some fairly good news this year. For those of you who have been on town council for a few years, you will remember that we have had some major increases in health insurance over the years. And so this year we have been able to negotiate down to 6% increase, which is still, you would say that's a hefty increase, but we have actually been in the position one year, I think just a couple of years ago, we had a 29% increase proposed to us. We did not go with that, but so 6% is really, I am not quite happy with it yet, but we're still working with our broker firm to possibly get that down lower. But that is what is in the budget currently, is 6% increase in over our current premiums. I will share with you, and I've had to frankly twist his arm, but Public Works Director Pennell has had a number of monstrous tasks on his list for a number of years now. His department has done a fantastic job at accomplishing a lot of the things, a lot of the projects that we have needed done over the years. But we keep adding to his plate. We keep adding to Public Works' plate. Every time we build a facility or put something online that they have to maintain, we add to their plate. So within this budget, and with regard to succession planning, I mean, I totally expect that Mr. Pennell will stay with us at least another 15 years. What's that? 15 minutes. I've got to talk fast. So I have included in the budget a position for Assistant Public Works Director. I think this has been a long time coming for his department. My goal would be, I don't know that I can accomplish this, but my goal would be that we hire someone who also has an engineering background that could follow in the footsteps of our very effective Public Works Director. But in regard to the need and also succession planning, I felt it was appropriate to add an Assistant Public Works Director to this budget this year. So you will see, and for very practical purposes, you'll see a half a year. I do not think we have time to run out and hire someone in 2 months or 3 months, or even have someone online by July 1. So I have included a half a year for this position to have someone come online in January of 2025. Did receive a request from the fire department. As you recall, last year, the fire department requested positions then, and it was at that point in time that I asked the fire chief, new fire chief at that point in time, to look at the organization of the fire department and look at what we truly need with the North Buncombe District and the town. He has done that. He has taken a look at the structure, and he has some ideas for restructuring that we will talk about certainly at a future meeting. But with that, we also need to acknowledge that as our town grows, we have got to prepare for public safety issues, and in order to do that, we have to add some positions. Last year, we added 3 positions in the police department. This year, I'm proposing 3 firefighter positions of the 6 that were requested. I did consider having those positions come online a little later, but Chief Harris and Chief Hunter and I and Ms. Dozier had a number of conversations about recruitment and how to recruit folks. And one of the keys to how we want to recruit this year is to basically get ahead of the curve and start recruiting out of local academies, fire academies that are going on. And so having these positions approved in July will allow us to go to the academy, which graduates in August. Is that correct? Beginning of August. Would allow us to jump in front, hopefully, jump in front of some other jurisdictions and grab some of those folks who have retired from the academy. And that's why the full year for those 3 positions have been requested. Merit program and cost of living adjustment. During your workshop on March 19th, I did ask for your opinions, your thoughts, and your feelings about adding a cost of living to our current merit program, and there was consensus that you would like to see that included in the budget, so I have included funding there. There's included a total of 5% for merit pay and COLA, and you'll see my recommendation there. The current CPI is 3.8, but I've recommended that 3% go to to cost of living adjustment, and then the other two, up to 2% on the other would go through the merit program. You see a table there of what has been anticipated for the upcoming budget year. I've talked to all of these managers, and these are what these figures that you see there for COLA and merit are what they're planning on proposing to their boards.
When will we talk about this more?
We'll talk about it at the next workshop if you'd like.
At the May workshop.
Okay.
We, obviously tonight, there may be time if you all want to have discussion about any of these items tonight, we can certainly talk about that as well. New initiatives, capital equipment, capital improvements, and vehicles. We had roughly $1.2 million requested in these areas from our department heads. Obviously, could not fund all of them, but the table on page 9 shows you what I have proposed in that far right column in that table. And then as you go down, you will see there's a couple of references to enhanced budget, and we'll get there in just a minute. But roughly $785,000 has been proposed in the budget, in the upcoming budget in those areas. Debt service, you're aware that we do put money aside for fire apparatus. This is going capital reserve fund. And to date, we have transferred $225,000 to this fund. So the enhanced budget is the next section. And you'll see there, again, to talk about, talking about sustaining the town's operations between now and next year's reval, but also the build out of some of these developments that are coming online. The proposed budget does not include those things that are in that enhanced table. But I've given you the table mid-page 10. There are sections there that I certainly I look forward to hearing your input on with regard to whether you want to fund those additional items and whether you want to fund them out of fund balance or tax rate increases. So then I go into a little bit, after that table, I go into some explanation of what we're looking for here. And one of those is, the first one is as you talked about at your strategic planning workshop, was discussed as an urban planner or urban designer. But then there was some conversation by some members of council saying that this should be a strategic planner position. So I really, as you might guess, those two can, on the surface at least, can be seen as potentially very different types of positions. And so I really need your input in requesting your input on that. And so that's why I was really hesitant to put that out there at this point in time, because I wasn't quite sure what we were looking for there.
There are many titles.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so, you know, boiling it down to what we think we're looking for, with us not knowing the true name. I did talk to somebody at the School of Government who said there's like 13 different titles for that same ball of wax or something.
But really, I'm not necessarily as interested in the title as what do you want this position doing?
Right.
So I'm not asking for necessarily the title, but what are the goals for the position?
I know, but that may be how come we say different things, is because
Possibility.
we don't know
Possibility, but-
necessarily what the title is.
Possibility, but I think my point here is that I have not heard consensus on this position. I have not, there hasn't been a vote, and I have not heard consensus, therefore I did not include it. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in there. It just means that we need more information. So as you go through, there's a number of things that I think, items that I think we need.
Can you describe a grapple truck with a knuckle boom?
Yes, so if you'll go to page
Got a picture of
page
it.
11.
Oh, I didn't
there's
get that
a small
far.
picture.
Okay.
Before that, let me hit DC fast chargers. So we've tried to narrow down the amount that we would need for the DC fast chargers for the police department. And right now, we're at 150. And again, that's an estimate. And so we really need to work through that further. But I want to hear from town council, is this something that you want to continue down the path of as far as charging stations? Do you know, I need to hear that input, and certainly, again, happy to put those types of things in, but I want to hear more input from town council in that regard. Knuckle boom loader grapple truck. So there, you have a very small picture there, and we can talk about that more in depth at a future meeting as well. My goal would be that we would talk individual by department, talk about each department and what their requests are and what their needs are for the year. And so we would talk about this more in depth. But I have not included the grapple truck with the knuckle boom loader in this budget, even though there's good reason to include it. And I will say to you that there's a couple of reasons, and they're significant. One is that right now, as you all, I'm sure are aware, Public Works Department pulls a chipper behind a truck. And sometimes that chipper has caused us some injuries, caused our employees some injuries. We've had, I list those here. In the last few years, we've had injuries with broken teeth, jaw dislocations, elbow injuries, rebar being thrown out, where people have put rebar in their trash, and then we pick it up, we throw it in a chipper. You can imagine how scary that would be. So there's some workers' comp issues there that we need to address. And frankly, Public Works has tried their best to do additional safety training. The folks that have gotten injured have all been wearing their personal protective equipment, but they still have gotten injured. Unfortunately, workers' comp does not tell us how much we have, or they have spent on our behalf for workers' comp claims for these kinds of injuries. So we have no idea the cost benefit for this. But this would certainly help us with regard to safety concerns, but with regard to the chipper, but also, as you're aware, we have a new truck, a garbage truck that reaches out and picks up the cans. It will not pick up the heavier, larger items. The knuckle boom on the back of a grapple truck would do that. So that is something to consider. It is not inexpensive. It's $220,000 in cash if we wanted to buy this for cash, with cash.
Is that, and that's just the loader, that's not the truck?
It's both.
Oh, it is?
Yes, yes. And Dale, do you want to talk about that now, or would you like to?
It is exactly
Yeah,
what's in,
yeah,
including that trailer thing that it dumps it in.
yes,
If I may offer one more thing.
absolutely.
We had another injury of an employee
Today.
on the chipper.
We did.
This is FYI.
So would we do away with the chipper?
No, what our idea there is that we'll take all the trash into this truck and we'll deposit it down behind Public Works in our area there. And then probably monthly, we'll tow the chipper down there and use this vehicle to pick that brush up out of the big pile and let it run through the chipper without someone standing there attending what needs to be done. So we still do all the chipper, we just won't do it on like 20 miles of streets.
Or with someone standing behind.
Yes,
And the
or
injury,
feeding it in.
yeah, the injuries have occurred, from what I understand, from the person feeding it in, stuff flies back and hits them. So this prevents the person from having to stand behind the chipper because this thing picks it up and. Right.
And the other way they become injured is when they're holding the tree and pushing it in, and then the one part of the tree or a limb gets twisted and jerks it out of their hand as it pulls it through. That's what happened to that.
Well, you have to have different types of attachment for that, because I'm just looking at this, looking at your chipper as far as feeding it in, and I don't quite.
This gravel truck can pick up the trash and set it over and push it into the chipper all in one operation.
Okay.
Of the workers' comp, I mean, I know we're getting off, but of all the workers' comp, is that pretty much in Public Works for this kind of thing, the majority of our workers' comp incidences.
We would have to go back and look to see what the other claims were related to, but a good number have
I know.
been
Yeah.
from the chipper.
I know, when I walk the dog or whatever, I saw somebody with rebar in their trash just a couple weeks ago, and I pulled it out because I was irritated.
Good, thank you for that. Thank you on behalf of the folks that do the work. Let's go ahead and finish, but go ahead. But I don't want us to get bogged down on that when we can certainly talk about it later.
That we used to hire all of our temporary employees doing mowing. The chipper was the one piece of equipment that Public Works had that would not allow those employees to.
That makes
operate.
sense.
That's how dangerous they consider it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so we've, for a number of months now, been talking about short-term rentals and monitoring of short-term rentals and all of the things enforcement related to short-term rentals. The town of Woodfin is using a company called Granicus. There are other companies out there, but they do monitoring of short-term rentals. This is not in the budget because town council simply has not made the decisions that it needs to make with regard to the regulation of short-term rentals. But we're looking at, Woodfin is paying currently $8,800. They're on a 3-year contract. I think it's the 3rd year of their 3-year contract. So we have included $10,000 just as a number to put in the budget if town council wishes to go this route for monitoring. We can talk about that further later. Another item on page 12 here, at the top of page 12, and I'm going to want Mr. Pennell to cover it at a future meeting, is the potential for a new parking area at Public Works. It would be for those of you who are familiar, all of you I'm sure are familiar, there's a grassy area down below Public Works, in between Public Works facility and Water Point Way, I think is the name of that development, the smaller homes there. And so Mr. Pennell has come up with an idea where we could achieve 12 more parking spaces in that area for $85,000. So that is something else that we would want you to consider. The next two, and this is getting into a little bit of what we're hoping to have a presentation to you at a future meeting, is the Eller Cove Watershed Trail System. We have submitted so the total for that is almost $1.1 million. Obviously, it could be a phased project. There's also $55,000 in here annually for maintenance of the watershed trail system. If it's approved by the county, obviously we don't need to do anything in this regard, but that is something that I've included in the budget message because I want us to be aware of it. If we do not receive funding for it, I would want your input with regard to whether we put it in the budget and fund it maybe in phases or however.
It could be also that we didn't do the full scope of the project,
That's
a smaller scope, smaller scope projects. I think the full scope includes parking lots and
Absolutely.
Camping grounds or something.
Absolutely.
So we might want to scale it down.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one is very closely related, and this one has not been completed yet. Elevated Trail Design has not completed their final report on the Quarry Road Trail System. This is the one that's back behind Public Works that would connect to the future Northridge Farms project. So we do not have numbers on that one yet, and you'll see that that's on the table on page 10. It's listed as to be determined because we simply do not have the figure for that. Additional funding for the street improvement program. I did not add anything in addition to the current street improvement funds, except for the Powell bill, and that's estimated at $148,000. And the reason being is that for a number of reasons, some of those due to demand for work from Public Works and also COVID, and for a number of reasons, we have approximately $1.4 million that's available for for the street improvement program. I'm not suggesting that we stop the street improvement program, please understand. We have $1.4 million to be used for that this year. And it's been reappropriated over the last couple of years. So the funds are there. They're just not included as spelled out in this budget. And so we would still move on with that. And then finally there, the recreation complex, I'm calling it a pavilion. I don't know what we call it in the end, but this is for restrooms and storage, and then a small area for those who are playing pickleball or using multi-purpose sports courts to get some rest and get out of the sun. So this would be, and again, this is a rough estimate too that Mr. Pennell has provided. Next, we move on, page 13. I'm almost finished with budget message. Page 13, proposed budget for the water fund is, again, $3.3 million. This is a 12.5% increase in expenditures. And you see the same table there showing the adopted budget versus the proposed budget and the percentage variance between the two. The last audit confirmed that we have roughly $5.1 million in unrestricted net position as of the end of June in the water fund, and we all know where those the majority of those funds are going to go to helping us with the water treatment plant, in addition to the funding that we've received from external sources, the $15 million and the other millions that we are supposed to receive. By the way, we have not received those yet. We would love to. I would love to see us get those dollars so that we could start gaining interest on them. But I'm sure that the state and federal governments are keeping those funds for the same reason.
That's right.
Water rates, based on the water rate analysis that was provided to you at last meeting by Weaverville, we have recommended a 4% increase there. I believe their recommendation was 4.5%, but we have we've only prepared the budget with a 4% increase. System development fees, the proposed budget estimates system development fees revenue of $150,000. This is about a 58% increase. This one's a really tough one to estimate. We've had difficulty every year in truly giving this a good number to stick with. So we will continue to watch this as we go through the budget process and change it if we need to. Debt service there.
I assume that's because it's hard to predict
That's correct.
development projects.
That's correct. Yes, sir. So debt service there, you see the $93,640 for the USDA revenue bonds, then the $207,000 for the town's water line extension project, and then original general obligations bonds, bringing the total debt service for the upcoming year to $300,000. The next section there, you have the very last table on page 14. You have the capital equipment, capital improvements and vehicles being recommended for the water fund. Again, would ask that we have further conversation about each of these items once we get to that process in the next workshop or one of the following workshops. So finally, in closing, thank you to Mayor and Town Council for allowing me the opportunity to again present a budget for the town. This is a budget that I believe meets the town's needs, invests in the services that our residents benefit from, and addresses the emerging needs as we look into the next year. We'll say that this has been a collective effort. Our department heads have contributed greatly. We've had some great conversations about where we're going and what we need to get there. And also thank our town employees. They are our community's lifeblood, and none of us truly can be successful without our employees doing the great jobs that they do. And then finally, certainly, last but not least, is I'm thankful for Ms. Dozier for her time and energy, and I won't add enthusiasm to that, but for her detail-oriented approach and thoughtful approach to the budget, and just for your assistance. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, that is all for the presentation of the message. You will see pages 16 through 18 are the budgets by department, and again, we'll go through those at a future meeting.
Thank you, Manager Coffey. So, council members, if there's any questions you have for the manager this evening, this is an opportunity to ask them, but if not, please take this document home and read it thoroughly and come back. And in the meantime, either call Selena with questions you may have or comments you may have, and come back prepared at our May workshop for a more thorough conversation about everything that's included in the proposed budget. But are there any questions or comments people have this evening?
I have a couple. By the way, it's a very difficult charge you have this year because we don't know how the economy's gonna go. And I have not seen before, but I was astounded at the population growth rate to 28. And a lot of the previous budgets said, I hadn't seen figures that was that high. So I think that's an unknown, I realize.
Yeah.
But that could drastically affect a lot of the things because of revenue and even water rates and everything. But I don't recall seeing that kind of growth projected recently.
It is tremendous. It is tremendous.
A lot of building going on.
Absolutely.
So if there's no more than that, please, like I say, examine this thoroughly and come back prepared to discuss it in much more detail next month. And if there's no other business this evening, we are adjourned.
So, I wanted to show you what I was looking at. So I had asked for this to be broken out, and the reason